Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I'm Manisha Gupta. The three-day India Energy Week was the first major event under India's G20 presidency. The aim was to create strategies to deliver a multifaceted energy system and making energy accessible, among others. Speaking to me at the summit, Sandeep Kashyap, COO at the ACME Group, sees green hydrogen and ammonia receiving higher investments. He also believes that India has the capability to run green plants on a 24/7 basis. Mr. Kashyap, thank you so much for talking to us at CNBC-TV18. And clearly, you're one person who is almost in all verticals when you look at renewables. We do want to know on what geographies do you think the penetration has been easier, what states have been more receptive, and where do you see a higher footprint going forward?
So in fact, as you rightly said, we are in solar. We are one of the largest solar players in the country today with a portfolio of 4.8 gigawatt. We have recently ventured into wind. We are also developing pumped hydro solar projects, and we have entered into the battery storage as well. The major reason of entering into all these verticals is primarily because today we believe the DISCOMs are not really looking at pure vanilla solar or wind power. They are looking at hybrid, more dispatchable or RE-RTC power, and therefore we are working on all these solutions. And in terms of the receptivity, I would say the whole program is run through RPO obligations. However, from the generation point of view, you would have seen in the last 3 to 4 years' time, most of the development which has happened primarily in the state of Rajasthan, because of the fact that you can generate electricity at the lowest cost over there, and you can actually supply that electricity to DISCOMs through ISTS network, which is the national grid, through PGSL substation. SECI has been playing a major role in this, and they are one of the largest aggregators as a government agency today and feeding power to various DISCOMs and states. So I believe at this stage every state is willing to take and wanting to take more and more renewable power by virtue of because of the fact that the renewable power is much cheaper than any other form of the power. By making it more dispatchable and stable in terms of RTC, I believe it is going to be a great time going forward.
Okay. What is also your visibility on the investment part of it, and how are you looking at fundings? There's a lot of conversation on investments coming in via collaborations also. What's your sense?
So for the renewable business, I believe it's a very established funding mechanism which is already in place. We have agencies like PFC, REC, IREDA. Generally, these are the government agencies which are funding the initial projects. And most of the times we see private banks or commercial banks come into play when the project is operational and running. And we as developers, we go and generally refinance the projects at that time, because normally these banks do not want to take the project execution risk. In terms of green hydrogen and green ammonia, which is the new area, I believe where the investments again are going to be much larger compared to a typical solar or a wind project. All these agencies are working on setting up the policies and the structure for funding of such projects. And I believe in these areas where we have technologies like electrolyzers, which will play a bigger role, and at the same time we will have international off-taker agreements coming into play. We will see a lot of foreign investments coming in India, both in terms of manufacturing, especially when Make in India manufacturing, there is a lot of focus from the government of India, and on every front, if you see on renewable, be it electrolyzers or solar manufacturing, which is modules. At the same time, we see green hydrogen, green ammonia. Government of India is running PLI schemes, and as a country, I would say we are one of those few countries where government has put money on the table and inviting companies and to come on and start manufacturing in India, including the Indian companies.
Okay, I have a two-part question. One, what sectors are you targeting when you are, making this energy? And two is, yes, there are a lot of verticals and there's a lot of push from the government and help as well. But how would you look at the cost competitiveness within the sector?
So from, if you see the renewable part of the story, we are almost one of the most competitive countries in the world, except Middle East, which is slightly better in terms of solar irradiance. And therefore the costs over there is slightly lesser, which we see. We ourselves are developing plants outside the country as well, which is Oman, where we have 30% more solar irradiance. But however, having said so, we also have certain advantages which we have in the country. As a country, we have a very large grid, national grid, which gives us an opportunity to bank power and run our plants, which is for green hydrogen and green ammonia, almost 24/7 by banking, which is not available in any of the countries in the world. So if we really see, we become almost equally competitive compared to Middle East countries, and the gap which we see to be export competitive with our product, we have been giving inputs to Government of India, Niti Aayog and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and they have been kind enough to understand it and making it a part of the incentive schemes on exports or even for the Indian consumption in the new policy which is recently come out for green hydrogen and green ammonia. With this, we believe to a large extent we will be able to produce green hydrogen and green ammonia at a price which is competitive elsewhere in the world, and this gives us an opportunity to really become an export hub for the country.
All right. Mr. Kashyap, thank you so much for taking time on talking to us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure is mine.
At the India Energy Week, PM Narendra Modi launched the solar cooktop, a product that has been designed by Indian Oil, and PM Modi placed a strong mandate on bringing solar cooktops to 3 crore Indian households in the next few years. I spoke to Abhishek Kar, who is Senior Program Lead at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water on the Green Push.
I think what is happening here is the PM's announcement is a clear signal that India is trying to push towards a clean stack of fuels. Currently, after the remarkable success of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, the PMUI program, where we reached out to 9 crore women, but we know that people are using a mix of firewood and LPG. And if you have to stack, and if stacking is inevitable, we rather stack with the cleaner fuels like solar and LPG rather than firewood. So it's a great, and it's a very ambitious thing, frankly, because they have started from 50 household pilot to they're going for 3 crore. But I do believe, because the government has done it for 9 crore households in a few years' time, which was a remarkable in terms of scale. So the government is ambitious. They are thinking of really pushing it through. I think some of the key issues that will be very important when we do this kind of rollouts is, what is the target audience? And if the target audience is the rural poor, like it was for PMUI program, then there will be questions around financing, because of course the cost of a solar, and I'm sure you've seen the stove with a pretty large panel, it is going to be significant. People will not be able to bear it. So will there be bank? Will be able to give microfinance? And the good thing with this is that the government has got the basis covered in terms of the basic infrastructure. People have access to bank accounts, it's linked to Aadhaar. So if the government plans to give out loans, it can be pretty quickly scaled up. So in terms of the elements of scalability are there, but what is going to happen is there will be significant need for private investment, unless the government wants to do it completely via the Indian Oil, or the other two OMCs can also join in. In case of solar, it will be like starting from the scratch. It's difficult, but I'm really hopeful this is going to be a great success.
I was reading a report from you which suggested that nearly 70% households were using LPG, and this is for 2021. Interestingly, you also talked about carbon credits on LPG. How is that going to work? And how do you look at the feasibility of it all?
Right, so carbon, whenever we talk about LPG as a fossil fuel and carbon credits, we're like, wow, really? But the thing is that research after research has shown in recent years that most of the firewood that is being used is being unsustainably harvested. If firewood is being sustainably harvested, there is no net carbon additions. But if it is unsustainably harvested, whatever the portion that is unsustainable, you are adding to it. So if you are transitioning, and we are like about to kind of release a policy brief with CSI and NIRI, Stockholm Environmental Institute and others, is that if globally you completely transition from firewood, whatever the sustainability levels are, to LPG, it actually has net gains for the climate. So so there is data and numbers which kind of prove something that seems very counterintuitive at first.
Abhishek, with the kind of world we are in, and so many announcements and new launches coming in from the Ministry of Petroleum and PM itself, how do you envision 2023 now? There's talk about fossil fuels and gas and hydrogen, renewables, EV. There's a huge energy future that the street is talking about.
Right, and that is where I think India is on the cusp of an energy transformation there. On one hand, we will have some short-term dependence on fossil fuels. That's why the PM today talked about exploration of fossil fuels. On the other hand, we're also talking about net zero and we're talking about solar stoves. So I think it kind of reflects the reality of our immediate near-term needs and our medium and long-term ambitions.
And where do you see the major investments going in?
I think, let me speak about the clean cooking space particularly. I think there is significant amount of space because in India, if you think of, there are just out of 25 crore households, say there will be around 15-16 crore who can afford LPG and electric induction stove. But for the other, especially which we so-called call the bottom of the pyramid, there are 9 crore PMUI beneficiaries. We have to reach out to them, and there is a significant need of investments in both R&D to reduce the cost as well as to give better after-sales service. Because you have to understand, biomass stove is free of cost, and behaviorally is very, very difficult to make people switch to a new one. If the new technology is there and it's not working for any reason, the cost of switchback is very minimal. They can just rebuild a chula in a few days, in a few hours time. That is the reason, it's very important that when you are trying to scale up clean cooking, we actually focus on not just making the product a kind of robust one, but also the after-sales service and the entire infrastructure, market infrastructure.
With that, it's time for a short break, but don't go anywhere. We bring to you more from the India Energy Week and renewables industry.